it is an extremely collectivist group. It's a very groupish religion. It's hive mind. If you look at Muhammad and look at history, okay, never read the Quran or Holy Scripture. Just look at what they have done historically. It is extremely okay. Oh, okay. The Islamic scientists were persecuted. Okay, the Islamic scientists, everyone admire the Islamic scientists, but all the Islamic scientists appeared at the same time the Christian scientists appear. So Islam is not rational. And in Sweden, there's this huge exotistic pro-Muslim. Okay, they are working on the universities. They teach Swedish women Islam on the universities. They are converting them, and they call it Arab studies or Islamology studies. And the assumption is essentially this. Okay, the Swedish population is very anti-Christian. Okay, this is true. This is true. I am an atheist. I don't like Christianity, and it is because we were Vikings. We, the Swedish people, are still Vikings subconsciously, insofar that we adopted Christianity unwillingly in the 11th century, and it was very. It never. We became Christian, but only in a very superficial sense. We never really we were super invested and super interested in the religion and so on. So okay, most people are, if they are religious, they are New Age. They're in a New Age, or they believe in God, but they don't believe in the Bible. There's plenty of people who have raw religious instincts, but they don't see themselves as Christian, or they see themselves as spiritual, but not as religious, because they don't follow our religion. They don't follow a church or a temple of any shape. And it's been this way before socialism. Essentially, it began with, well, it began in the 17th and 18th century, essentially. And Christianity was very soft. Because, we always had like intellectuals, theologians, and intellectuals debating here: does God exist or not, and what does a God mean, and what does religion mean? Christians, as we had a huge bunch of different opinions, even in Victorian era, and very earlier. And people were not killed for being atheistic, or so. Well, it could be punished or censored, but anyway, we are not really Christian. And this is very important. Because of this, the left want us to be Islamic, because they are so bored with Christianity. The Swedish population is so incredibly bored with Christianity, and so incredibly negative to Christianity, especially to Christianity as it's in other countries. Incredibly negative. And that's why there are these people who think that Islam is better. There's a bunch of misguided intellectuals who basically for more than 100 years have studied Islam, and they basically fantasize about Islam being so an interesting alternative to Christianity, even though it is worse. It is just as bad or worse as Christianity. And they're completely misguided because it's fantasies. They have created a fantasy about Islam that is about their own desires. It the Swedish Islamologists, they have their own desires, their own utopian society, and they call it Islam, and it has nothing to do with Muslims. Really, it's a pure fantasy, and it's just like the Buddhists, the European Buddhists, who and the counter movement people in the 60s who went to India and China, and they come back with Hinduism and Buddhism. They just copied all the religions and imitated it, and like it's just hippies.
class hippie societies of
Yeah,
Sweden
and
in the
they and
70s.
it's not that's not Buddhism and it's not Hinduism. It's just their hippie free sex stuff, and the same way with Islam in in Sweden. But here's the thing: when the real Muslims came and started to murder and rape people, these exoticists, these hippies in the universities, they just refuse to believe reality. They just sit in the universities and defend the rapist. Oh, for example, if it's rape, it is a beautiful romantic relationship between two races. It's like a poor Muslim and a Swedish woman, and so racist about that people had to invent these lies that they were actually killing and raping her and stuff. And they completely sit completely divorced from reality, and then the real people are so afraid of the Muslims. But basically, for a long time, people are just afraid of the Muslims, and the Swedish society is so bourgeoisie. It was like, the Swedish society is incredibly bourgeois, incredibly. And with bourgeois, I mean middle class, not just middle class, but normal. Middle class in the okay, they are normal, extremely normal, conformist, average in intelligence, mediocre, but extremely extraordinary at being diplomatic, extremely gifted when it comes to compromising and being submissive, but still get what you want, and negotiate, and being soft, but still get what you want, and neat and orderly, and they are neat and they're orderly and they're fixated on rules and habits and convention. And normality, conformity, adjust to the group, to the normality, to everyone, and being optimistic and ignoring problems of society outside of your own villa or your own family. Extremely good at so that is like super bourgeois for me. um, and because of this, we have a small group of critics. We have like Sweden always have critics and sensible intellectuals that are pointing out the problems, and the rest of society never care. It's like it's in the 80s. Okay, we the intellectuals in as far as the 80s, in the 70s, they talked about Islam and multiculturalism and the problem. But way back then, and just continued to talk about it, like predicting exactly what's going to happen, and society just keeps doing it, and because the bourgeois, the comfortable middle classes, and the comfortable working class, middle class, upper class, the entirety of society, they didn't want to care about problems. It was just for example, an intellectual artist, whatever, he's writing an article, or he goes to a museum or a social gathering, and he starts to talk to people and say that, oh, there are these other cultures. Okay, our cultures are different. There are other cultures where people are not like us, where they are religious. They are religious, and they are fundamentalists. They kill people if they don't have the right religion, and you cannot marry as you like, and you don't have freedom to do what you want to do because of religion, and so on. And on these cafeterias and in these museums and in these social gatherings, the majority is horrified by these critic, because they say okay, that the majority of the township or the neighborhood, they always believe that the entire world is like Sweden. They believe that in Africa everything is the same as in Sweden. If you go to Africa, you can behave just like a Swedish person. If you go to like a tribe primitive Stone Age tribe, then you can behave just like in Sweden and do the same thing. And when you try to explain religion, here's the thing: you could not warn people, Swedish people, against Islam, because as soon as you talked about religion, they stopped listening. As soon as you try to explain to them there are other societies, they stop listening. They stop listen. They stop to think they're just bored. Um, they couldn't envision another world or another society outside of their comfortable villas with the cafes or their employer. They had their work, their family life, and then some social life, and they were incredible in the 70s, 80s, 90s. They were incredibly uninterested. They were also they were completely unaware. It was impossible to warn them against enemies from other countries because they were not interested in your description of these enemies. Do you understand? And they were so incredibly.
Yes, indeed.
They just sat on a fucking table with their coffee and their snaps and you know, and they just yeah, I think that's racist. I mean, certainly some things are the same in all cultures. I mean, that's absurd. You go too far. I mean, and why should we care about this? I mean, nothing is going to each other's side. The world is this way, and it couldn't possibly be some other way. You're absurd. I mean, if there's other if other cultures exist, I don't understand how such an absurd society could exist. Just if the Arab countries were that bad, they would all like die out automatically. I mean, surely anyone who sees our way of life must understand that this is the only way to do things. And or the more you are so negative. You should be more positive. You should be more positive. I mean, I feel that you are focusing too much on the negatives. Um, oh my God, this is such a bad dinner table discussion, or it's like or it's bad and it's never good enough. It's bad for the mood. They want some child friendly or family friendly on the event. So the Swedish people are completely in a bubble. The Swedish people were horrified by America, by England, by France. Couldn't understand small like Greece, Turkey. Very difficult for them to understand or comprehend to. It's like, and the Swedish people used to be completely snobs abroad. Like they okay, touristing. That's tourist to Spain. Behave like assholes, and they, why are the native Spanish people so upset? I don't understand. It's like Swedish. If a Swedish family went to Spain, they couldn't understand that, for example, the building. Codes were different or that they would find that they would find like a carpenter or builder that would do things differently or that had different work hours and so on. And this okay, it sounds absurd, but social democracy was basically it wasn't socialist. It was a part of some Swedes' identity. Social democracy allowed people to believe that Swedish norms was okay social democracy. So essentially, Swedish norms are simply universal. That they are the law. If there is a government, any kind of government that is stable and orderly is going to be a copy of Swedish society, and that's basically how they saw. So they for example, news.
important premise.
For,
With the
for,
question, everyone should definitely emulate us.
yeah, we are the superior Germanic people. We are rational. There's no other way to do things. And for example, England is seen as Swedish. Okay, English policy, politics, and news.
Modern mofo.
It's described as Swedish policies. Okay, well, here's the thing: when the Swedish people learn about anything that happens in England, it's censored, so it's described in Swedish terms. So you are described as a Swedish political party, and you are described as we perceive some Swedes. And America is like a Sweden, described like a Sweden. Soviet Union is described as was described as a Sweden. Basically, everything was described as Sweden. For example, I barely knew anything about English or international politics before the internet in the not even in the 90s, in the 2000 zeros. Then I basically started to learn about world politics and become interested in world politics. Because the Swedish people did not know anything about world politics. The Swedish media was working hand in hand with the local politicians. So that the narrative that Sweden was superior. We are the superior people. We are the white Germanic people, the beautiful people. We are white, beautiful, and well, not all of our not all are blonde, but but still, it was this. Oh, we are white. We are always going to be white. We are always going to be, and we're always going to have the countryside, the farms, and we're always going to have these small-scale industry factories, and we're always going to have medieval. We are always going to live in medieval cities. We're always going to fish our own food, eat our own pigs. We are always going to eat Swedish pig. We are always going to eat Swedish bread, and so on. And we should mostly drink Swedish beer. And we are living. We should always work with the labor unions and the big businesses are always going to be Swedish big businesses, and the Swedish
Multi
capitalistic big business. I mean, it's all of them. It's all of the political parties, the right and the left. It's the whole in life was like that in the 80s and 90s and before people did not the Swedish population did not know that there was anything. They did not know anything about other religions. They did not know anything about any enemies or threats or dangers, and they barely understood what the European Union was. Completely insulated, and in an extreme bubble of comfort, of low information culture about the rest of the world. Um, the only thing you needed to know was your individual job and so on, and everything in Sweden was an indestructible, invisible, never changing bubble, never changing world. And yeah, and other cultures did not really exist as unless like copies of Sweden or sites. So yeah.